They've come from the bowels of hell.
The Dana Gould Hour.
Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet.
I fought a dog that killed the calf that ate the canary. What is truth?
And once again, welcome back.
And we're back. And as the old song says, we're out here having fun in the warm California sun. But we've got a hot show for you. See how I did that? Bobcat Goldthwait is with us today. Bobcat is one of my best friends, and we have a movie coming out together in the fall that we made called Joyride. And we're going to tell you a little bit about it, as well as some other interesting stories from our past and our present. Some stuff about Bob's friendship with Robin Williams and his return to stand-up. In fact, if you want to see Bob on the road this summer, get out a pen. On Friday and Saturday, July 23rd and 24th, Bob will be in Rosemont, Illinois at Zanies. July 30th and 31st, he will be in Kansas City, Missouri at the Comedy Club of Kansas City. August 13th and 14th, he will be in Spokane, Washington at the Spokane Comedy Club. Friday, September 10th, he will be in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the Tiger Room. And on Saturday, September 11th, he will be in Indianapolis at the White Rabbit Cabaret. As for me, I will be heading out with Bob soon to promote our little movie, Joyride, and also Excitement, Season 2 of Hanging with Dr. Z. Our Kickstarter drops on August 1st. So just go to hangingwithdrz.com, hangingwithdrz.com, and get on our mailing list and sign up for notifications. We have tons of gifts and prizes for different levels of donations. It's the Kickstarter for Season 2 of Hanging with Dr. Z coming your way. If you like the show, why not sign up for our Patreon? Go to danagould.com and check it out. See how I've whittled that down, but it does help. As I've said before, the Patreon it allows us to do the show. A lot of people work very hard on the show. They deserve to be paid, and the Patreon accomplishes that. Nobody's getting rich, but everybody's getting paid, and that's what matters. And I super appreciate everybody who signs up. It's $5 a month. You get some extra stuff. You get some audio content. You get some video stuff, and it works out pretty good. Nobody's crying. All right, that's it. It's on to our filthy business.
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour podcast.
The Dana Gould Hour. Free and worth it.
It's a hot, I'm going to say it's a gray, kind of muggy day high atop the Mulholland Drive view shelf here at Falcons Lair Recording Studios. And I'm joined by an old friend of mine and an old friend of yours.
I would like to think one of your best friends. How about that?
Well, one of my best friends, one of their old friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I thought you meant because 59, being 59.
Bob, you've been 59 for 12 years now.
You know what's sad about being 59 was unsolicited. I got the AARP catalog sent to my house. And I get
AARP mail every 3 days, and I throw it directly into the trash.
I look at the magazine. I go, I'm not even hey, there's an article on the Clash. Wow.
Well,
and
let me introduce you.
Sure.
Bob Goldthwait is here.
Yes, or Bobcat or Bob Scratch Goldfire, whatever.
Bobcat Goldthwait.
Broke
onto the scene. Robert Francis Goldthwait broke onto the comedy scene after a historic Late Night with David Letterman appearance in 1984. Went on to become one of the most iconic stand-up comedians of his generation.
I was 20 years old.
Jesus Christ.
Nobody said, "Oh, this guy is so young." Letterman's introduction, I think, was this is one of the oddest or weirdest or strangest acts or something like that. No, the fact I was 20, I thought, whatever, that's an achievement. All right, let me not interrupt your introduction.
Yes. Can you tell he's become a director?
He's insufferable. That was good, Dana. You're giving me a 6, and I need an 8 or 9 out of you.
I see it in the eyes, but I don't feel it from the chest.
I go big in here, small in here. Now look,
that's the opposite of everything I do. The best direction I've ever gotten was, Dana, I want you to take that down about 100%.
About 10,000 notches.
Yeah.
Do you know what I do when I'm working with often comics? Because we're very nervous. We want to entertain the craft service. We want to reach the whole room. And it's always, I remind them that the only person you have to make laugh is me. I have headsets on, like when Robin was in World's Greatest Dad, he's like, oh, and so it's just like it was almost like something fun for him to do, just to try to make me laugh with the headsets. But and I'm super self-conscious. Comedians are aware of what everybody's doing in the room because that's what we do on stage.
Right.
So what I often give like a comedian to do is just some bit of business and then they relax.
Well, one thing that is interesting is people assume that if you're a good comedian, that you're a good actor. They're completely opposite disciplines.
Yeah.
One is about talking and one is about listening.
But comics are super well known for their listening.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. When I got a real acting job, I got cast in the show called Mob City, which was Frank Darabont created, and it was about the LAPD gang unit in the 1940s. And it did one season. John Bernthal was in it, like real actors. John Bernthal, Jeff DeMunn, like real actors, and me. And I called a friend of mine, Chicago guy, Todd Stashwick, who's a super funny guy, but also does a lot of real serious work. And I said, like, who did you go to? I'm desperate for help. And he said, Leslie Kahn. Just call Leslie Kahn. So I called this woman, Leslie Kahn, in Hollywood. I go to her studio and she goes, all right, let's do a scene. I'm going to give you a scene. And I get about 2 words into it. She goes, I'm going to stop you right there. Like literally did not get a sense. It was amazing. And she said, you're going to be really easy to fix because you're doing everything perfectly wrong.
Wow.
And what it's basically like it was turning a sock inside out. I was coming from the outside in instead of the inside out. And that's, they say that the motion picture camera is a machine that photographs you thinking,
Yeah, that's true.
Comedians don't think on stage, they emote.
Right.
So,
well, that thing of I directed World's Greatest Dad, but Guillermo from the Jimmy Kimmel Show was supposed to play the limo driver, and he couldn't get out of work. So luckily for me, I had a suit because I thought my dad was going to die. I had a suit. Oh God, it's me.
Yeah, I know.
I just have that emergency court/funeral suit with me. So I had the suit, so I played the limo driver. I wasn't supposed to do a cameo. The door opens.
Hitchcock moment.
Yeah, so the door opens up, and I look, and there's Robin Williams, who's a brilliant actor, and I'm like, I've been directing the movie for 3 weeks now, and I see Robin, and I'm like, that's Robin Williams. I'm in a scene with Robin. Like I couldn't remember my dialogue, and Robin goes, you forgot your lines, didn't you? I go, yeah. He goes, well, who wrote this shit? And but yeah, you mentioned Frank Darabont.
By the way, I've had that experience with Robin, and
yeah,
it happened to me 3 times. Father's Day with Robin, For Your Consideration with Catherine O'Hara, and a little film I like to call Dumb and Dumberer with Eugene Levy, where I'm in a scene with them and I'm making eye contact with them, and I'm like, you have no business being here.
Yeah, well, for him, he actually opened a door It was like
Literally.
Norm Crosby's super surprise mystery guest, and he opens the door and I didn't see the set. I didn't see cameras. I just saw Robin and me, and I'm like, I'm in a scene with Robin Williams, which is so insane because our relationship was not ever really based too much on as much as I loved him and I thought he was a genius. It was always like, people like to wind him up and get him to perform, and they like to riff with him, and there's nothing he liked to do better. Yeah, he's not hard to goad into doing that. Right. He's like a Yorkie, he's just like So but I truly Yorkie. If you ever saw me when he was doing like that, I wasn't being rude, but I just kind of shut off, and I would just because I wanted to know how was his day, what's new, and you don't have to do that now. And I think no, but I think what I mean is that's what you're saying at the time. Like you don't. I know you're funny. Well, that was the argument. Well, not an argument, but he was entertaining this whole restaurant one day, and I was like, look, man, you're the pinnacle of worldwide known funny. And you want the whole world to think you're funny. You're not, if you don't entertain these people in this restaurant today, you're not going to lose any of your cred. Or and we started discussing how I wasn't interested in having everyone love me. I was more interested in people hearing me. We would go on and do a show together and be like, people go, wow, Robin Williams was there. Yeah, but did you hear what fucking Bobcat Goldthwait said? And who said that? Bob Nickman once said. Bob Nickman is a very funny comedian and writer that Bob and I started out with in Boston. And he went on, he brought on Roseanne and had a great career. And he said that I don't necessarily want to be the funniest guy on the show, but I would like to be the most interesting. Yeah. Well, but the thing is, and Robin said to me, he goes, we were discussing this. He goes, yeah, but I said, the difference is your form of neuroses is way more lucrative. Yeah, it's not as lucrative to be like, well, that guy's an asshole. Could you believe he said that? Not a real cash cow. But I worked with Frank Darabont on Tales from the Crypt with Richard Donner, who the late just passed. Yeah, and Richard Donner was amazing. Like Richard Donner, I did Scrooge with him and this Tales from the Crypt, which was supposed to be like 8-day shooting and ended up being a few weeks long. Really. Yeah, who's going to tell? Hey, Dick, pick it up. So he would always. He never got my name right. He was bigger than life and a big booming voice. Right, and he directed Richard Donner. For people who don't know, in addition to directing, he directed all the Lethal Weapon movies. Like he's a huge Goonies. Huge A-list director. But he also directed things like there was a series, I can't remember. He started doing the Banana Splits. Yeah, on the Banana Splits, but there was a series on there. It was like a serial. Danger Island? Danger Island. That's what he directed. Oh, okay. So he directed Danger Island, Gilligan's Island, anything with an island. Anything with an island, yeah. Anything, a traffic island, he would do it. So he said, he was like, he'd be like, I remember in Scrooge, he'd be like, Mad Dog, Red Cat, Bob, he couldn't remember Bobcat. Bill Murray's like, Red Dog? So one day he goes, kid, you want to learn how to direct? And I was like, wow, Richard Donner is going to teach me how to direct. He goes, come with me. So we go to his trailer and he throws me a pillow and he goes, take a lot of naps. And then he went to sleep. So we both were in separate, like, easy boys, and we just took a nap. So years later, but that's much better than had he just went up to you and said, Bob, you want to take a nap with me in between the breaks? Yeah. Bob, I'm scared. Sometimes I feel like life is an empty, dark void. Just sleep with me. Will you watch me sleep? So make sure Mel Gibson doesn't try to smother me. Right. So, this is a perfect example where I can interject into my sad Roddy McDowell impression. All right. Roddy McDowell told a story about he was filming Battle for the Planet of the Apes and he had caught a cold during a production, which is a terrible thing to do when you're wearing that makeup because your nose is removed from the game, from play. And
And he tells the story on some videos. I had a cold, which I never catch during work, and I had to wear the appliance. And I went to my trailer and I had some cold medication and I took a nap. And then when I woke up, I looked in the mirror and I didn't know who I was and I started to cry.
So he actually thought he was an ape briefly?
I don't know, but it was just like, you just want to like, come here, you're going to be okay.
But, Donner was like, it's funny. When he talks about Goonies, he always talks about it being such an unpleasant experience because of all the kids. He's lightheartedly just at like how annoying the kids were.
Uh-huh.
And
but they really were.
But Spielberg did a thing like Donner went to Hawaii as right immediately after Goonies, and then Spielberg flew all the kids and their families all around Donner's house, so that all the kids that he was trying to get away from. And at Warner Brothers, Dick had a window that faced a wall. And then I come back and he had them paint his view of Hawaii from that wall. I just love the guy. But I think the reason he found Goonies that making that annoying was because he really was a big kid. He was loud and funny, and he definitely influenced me in some ways behind the camera and how to control a set. I'm certainly not as loud as him, but the idea of keeping the tone and the vibe fun, and the fact that you don't yell cut and action all the time, you could just go again, and throwing actors new ideas right that moment. He was definitely the guy that would like shoot off a starter pistol or an air horn to get a genuine surprise take out of you.
And see, that's an interesting thing about especially motion picture directing, even more so than television directing, just because of this because theater, because of screen size, but yeah, because the smallest thing will read bigger. The biggest laugh, talking about Scrooge, the biggest laugh in Ghostbusters is Bill Murray like moving his eye like a fraction of a centimeter. Right. It's the very small things. And if you can get people in the moment, like people don't understand when you're making a movie or TV, you call cut. 70 people run onto the screen. The wardrobe people come in, makeup people come in, everybody's fun. And there's no spontaneity in the moment. And a friend of mine was just working on a movie where the director was like, you cannot deviate from my text even a little bit. And you'll get a great, completely concrete performance that is lifeless and not fun. But it will be a reading of your script.
Or if you're a genius, you could, that would make sense. But I am not a genius.
Yeah,
so
there aren't a lot of geniuses. But Sam Raimi does the same thing. Sam Raimi will he'll just burn the film. Back to one, don't cut. Yours, do it like a turtle. You do it like a squirrel. Right. Go. You know, and create energy and
this idea that these ideas are coming to you because they are genuinely coming to you at that moment. But I remember. So when I ran into Dick years later, I go, you brought me into your trailer. You said you're going to teach me how to direct. And all you told me was to take a lot of naps. And he goes, it's true. And I go, Dick, I've never had enough money to take a nap during anything. Once he got the Warner Brothers jet and we were flying to go see Rickles. Donner says to me, he's kind of getting cocky. He's like, pretty nice, huh? The Warner Brothers jet. And I said, Dick, if they could find a guy that could do Lethal Weapon 2 for a dime cheaper than you, we would not have this jet. And he got really sad and he goes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, and but that's a good lesson to tell people, like especially like was writing something with somebody who's just kind of getting going, and it was disappointing result for this person in terms of the sale, and I was like, the shit sandwich. They never stop serving the shit sandwich to anybody. And I was walking through a studio once, and you hear like, well, yeah, but what does Al Pacino really get you? It's like it doesn't. Right. They don't. It never ends. never ends for anybody.
Scorsese's shit sandwich is getting cold. It's been up here for a while.
Yeah.
Ding ding, Marty.
Yeah, and the negative doesn't mean anything, nor does the positive. You know, they don't mean it when they say you're a genius either.
No, but I just remember him getting notes, Scorsese hearing about him getting notes on I don't remember which picture it was, but
Richard Donner. No,
Scorsese. And I'm like,
how do you give Martin Scorsese notes?
Where's your brain at that you think you're going to give an idea to Martin Scorsese that's going to make the picture better? It's like sometimes you get notes and they are solutions, and that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Or that you get notes and they come from somebody who's seeing the overall thing. Yeah. You know, when I have I'm on a project right now, and I look forward to the notes. Everybody is smart, and the notes are great. Well, when I go to a screening, the first things people say where they go, I don't understand that scene. That's valid. Then like about 5, 10, 20 minutes later, everybody's now no longer giving you helpful notes. They're now telling you how they would make the movie. Yeah. But I remember someone sent me notes, because that's why I make really tiny indie movies outside of the mainstream. So I have less notes.
Yeah. So, or the most helpful notes is like, I wish it was about a robbery. Yeah, that doesn't help me.
Well, so I got a bunch of notes once unsolicited, and we had this German Shepherd in the editing bay, and I took the notes because it was on the yellow legal pad, and I just put peanut butter over it, and I let the dog eat the notes, and I videoed it with my phone. And it's just this dog eating the notes. And I said, hey, got your notes? And it's just this dog.
And how long did the dog?
No, because that's the thing. It's like, I like animals enough that it's just him starting, because I actually stopped and wrestled the paper out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, it all depends. I mean, but again, like you talk about the difference between, and talk about like stand-up, you're a director now primarily, and you're back to doing stand-up again. You've got some gigs coming up that I'm going to give at the top of the show.
But yeah,
so it won't be extant at this point. But the greatest part about the job of a comedian is that you get, the only note is they didn't laugh. So I need to fix that.
Also, I think like performing in front of a live audience after 15 months of, I'm not on social media too much, but when you read comments and things, you start thinking that's humanity, and it's not.
So not Twitter specifically,
where people are just hunting down.
Yeah.
It's not reality. So
not at all.
I got on stage and, hey, did anybody not get vaccinated here? Because if you didn't, you could just fuck off, you stupid hillbilly. Met with applause and laughter. I thought that was going to be
rip
divisive.
The room in half. Yeah,
split the room in half. But the reality of it is maybe the people that come out and see me.
So Rob Schneider was not in the audience.
So Rob Schneider's implying that we shouldn't get vaccinated, and that's what the Second Amendment is for, implying that
I couldn't unpack that.
If you try to vaccinate him, he will shoot you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. After all the amazing advice and guidance I've gotten from Rob over the years, this one was really
this one didn't ring true. You went back up.
Yeah, this was really a
back up. I'm speechless, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, but then you.
Well, that's the downside of one of the many downsides of social media is that. And it's a dangerous thing that we live in the times that we live in, is that there is such a thing as an objective truth, and
I mean,
but that's under fire. It's like, well, I'm just asking questions. Well, if you think the moon is square, that's not a question. That's not a valid question.
Also, it's reality is not a choose your own adventure book.
Yeah.
You can't go, I don't like these facts, so I'll find
alternative universe. Well, Fox is coming out with a Weather Channel now. You know, it's just like it's true. No, it's true. I mean,
but that's good.
There is a, and this is not good. There is a fully functioning alternative reality going.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming
a giant chunk of the country.
I'm assuming that's just so people get, positive news about climate change on this weather channel.
And it's whatever. Yeah. It's whatever exactly.
I've lived here in the Midwest. There's a couple things.
You recently relocated from Southern California.
And I'm about an hour outside of Chicago. And after 35 years of LA, first of all, this body is smoking hot in the Midwest. I am a thin.
Really, yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a piece of ass. I'm so skinny. That guy's got to eat.
Liz Winstead described people in the Midwest. They're built like lazy boy recliners.
Yeah, it's a lot of the flipper people from Wally, but
yeah.
But I love where I live. I live out in the woods. I live on a dead end street. I have an acre and a half. Half of the acre is all woods, which I spend
to see you on your property shirtless and in bib overalls with a pig mask on would be completely like, yep, that all tracks.
But I spend so much of my day taking down all these widowmaker trees, these old dead trees, out in the property. I got a chainsaw and an axe, and Tom Kenny is so upset. I mean, he's not joking around. He goes, Bobcat, like trying to get other people to join in. Bobcat shouldn't have an axe. Like he thinks there should be an intervention. He's really disturbed by this idea. And, I can't do anything in moderation. So the wood that I've chopped out and cut, it's 30 feet long, about 4 or 5 feet high of chopped wood at this point.
Okay. But yeah, you don't Mr. T your property.
Yeah, that's what everybody's afraid of. It's like that I'm going to be Mr. T. But
you don't want to be in the East. You don't want to be in the Easter Island of Illinois.
But again, I can't do anything in moderation. So like even now,
I know you.
Even now, while we're doing this, I'm going, I think that new axe got in today. Like I want to get back to chopping wood. I have 3 axes now.
Well, I've recently bought 2 wheelchair ramps for my projector.
Oh, okay. Did you find them? Did you find them in your AARP magazine?
I went online, but I have a projector. I have a screen in the back of my house. I have a big wall, and I have a screen installed. And I have a friend of mine who's like a technical genius, and he built me a cabinet that has Apple TV and DVDs, and you can just project on the house, and it's gorgeous.
But how big is the projector that it needs a wheelchair ramp?
Well, it's in a cabinet. Everything is in a cabinet with wheels.
Oh, okay.
Which is the size of basically it's the size of a safe from an old movie. It's not that heavy, but it's lugubrious. So I bought a 4-foot wheelchair ramp, but it was a little too short. Works in the back, and then I had to buy an 8-foot wheelchair ramp.
Oh, sure.
Up the house. But, it's like I will not be denied watching movies that I was too young to see in theaters in my backyard on the big screen.
Well, is it the big screen, or do you want the drive-in experience?
It's both. It's both. I'm in my yard, but it's a big screen, and you're outside, and people come over on Thursday nights.
The first movie I remember, and I'm not sure which one it was, we went to a double feature. All the kids fell asleep. Mr. Toole, our neighbor, and his kids, we went, and all the kids fell asleep, but I didn't. So the first one was like, Herbie the Love Bug or something like that. And then the next was some Clint Eastwood film, and I'm not sure which one it was.
A double bill.
Well, yeah. And I remember staying awake watching this, and just, that was probably when I got the bug more than
Herbie the Love
Bug. And then Clint just shooting people in some spaghetti western. And I'm not sure which one it was. I feel what's the one where he paints the town red and calls it hell?
High Plains Drifter.
Yeah, I think it was High Plains Drifter.
Which is also, by the way, the ending of High Plains Drifter is also the ending of Blazing Saddles.
Oh, wow.
The fake town.
And confuse everybody. Yeah. Yes.
But Herbie the Love Bug and High Plains Drifter is an insane double bill. That's
Well,
like in the big picture. Tess and Hardly Working.
Well, we would always get in Syracuse, the drive-ins were always split. Like it would be like a commercial film. I mean, in that case, they were commercial, but it'd be like a commercial family-friendly film.
Right.
I remember Tom Kenny and I with dates at the drive-in, and we watched something that's appropriate. And then all of a sudden this AIP, American International thing comes up, and it's subtitled, and it's this guy in a dungeon with a woman, and he's whipping her, and he's like, I love you in the boots. I love you in the boots.
Was it Dr. Terror's Torture Dungeon? I'm trying to think of what the movie was.
I don't know, but I remember Tom Kenny doing a spot-on impression. I love you in the boots. So we should talk about what the hell we've been doing, because we went on the road. We first started on the road. And
we did for those of you, Bob and I did a little project just before the pandemic,
right?
Where we broke into a lab and we released this pandemic onto the world. We thought it'd be funny. Right. we were in Wuhan working in a lab. We thought it would be a prank.
Apparently what stays in Wuhan doesn't stay. Yeah. It flies against the Vegas theory. So no, you and I made we will probably do another thing where we get into it heavier, but we made a documentary, you and I on the road doing stand-up live dates. Right. And because the show that we were doing, we first started going out doing stand-up, and we'd flip a coin to see who was going to headline that night. And then we both caught on that people enjoyed the part of us.
The ribald badinage.
Yeah, us screwing around trying to figure out together we were getting more laughs. So eventually we just jettisoned doing our acts, and
we realized that they liked us both together.
They liked us together.
Still fought it for a couple days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're wrong.
They're wrong. It doesn't matter that the laughs are bigger and the show's spontaneous.
Yeah. So no, but what was great, and so for people who don't know, who didn't see the shows, Bob and I would perform, and we would go on stage together, and we would talk, and then we didn't rewrite our act to be the Smothers Brothers, but we both know each other's repertoire pretty well, and it was different. The great thing about it was very improvisational in the sense that it was different every night. But I could tell when we were getting into an area where Bob had a bit, and I would literally step back, and you would step forward, and then it would go vice versa, and this developed into a really exciting show because it was never the same thing.
No, it was never the same. Yeah. And then I don't know how deep we want to get into it, but when we first initially tried to start it, we were in a car accident. We don't want to get into that, but
we can. I mean, we can. It's my show. We can come on as many times as we want.
Okay, so I got a concussion. We both ended up in the hospital, and I say this in the doc, but it's true. I was laying in the gurney. And so this is a year ago. I was laying in the gurney, and I'm trying, people keep asking me my name and the date, and I'm starting to get those right, but I don't remember. I didn't know what we were doing. I didn't know. I couldn't remember anything in the hospital.
It was weird. We had done some dates, and we decided let's film 3 dates and edit it together into a special. And as we were literally pulling into the parking lot of the first date, we got T-boned pretty brutally in a car. We
broke our ribs on each other, which is the origin of a supervillain. It was like, so we smashed into each other, but
I Malanded your Rosie Greer.
Yeah, and that's what we get for calling the show with two heads. Which is also strange, but we should say we were 2 blocks from the gig in our hotel. So we did not wear seatbelts, which was stupid.
In the back seat,
we really were that close. We should have just walked.
We should have just walked. Yeah.
So I'm in the hospital, concussed. I don't know where I am.
When I knew there was a problem, we're in the ambulance.
Yeah,
and the first thing that's happened is I couldn't breathe. I got the wind knocked out of me, and I did have a flash, like a half a second flash of, oh, this is where I'm going to die here, looking at the roof of a car. It was my thought.
Oh, and I split my head open. I had blood.
You literally look like the Don Post Tor Johnson mask.
Yeah, that's what you were thinking. I'm literally die.
Looking at Tor Johnson mask. But then when we got in the ambulance, and then people ran up to the car, and they realized that it was the show. And they're like, "Oh, and
are you guys okay? Can we get our money back?"
And then when we got in the ambulance, you kept going, "Is Emily okay?" And they
Emma.
go, "Yeah, she's okay." Emma, right?
Emma,
the driver.
Emma.
The driver.
Yeah.
Is Emma okay? And they said, "Yes, she's all right." And then it would be like 2, 1. Is Emma okay? And I was like, "Oh,
yeah." And I was concerned about my hat.
You broke your pumpkin.
Yeah, and I kept asking about my hat, which was fine. And
how's the hat?
And if Bronx, people had to tell me later on. I kept asking about Bronx, the little dog that was with.
Well, he saved my life because I was going to be sitting in the death seat, but Bronx was there, and I went, "Oh, I'll just sit in the back." And had I not sat in the back, had I been sitting in that seat, it would have probably been.
Yeah. But Bronx was fine, actually. He just because he since has left us, but he was fine. Yeah. He just not much phased Bronx. So right. I'm in the hospital. I'm on the gurney. We both were on gurneys, and as my memory came back, I truly had the thought. I thought, "Oh my God, he really is the president." Like I had this window where Trump wasn't the president. Yeah. Like I had it knocked
out of your mind.
So I had that same day in November happen to me twice, where you go, "Oh my God."
Oh yeah, you had the realization of it twice.
I think when I initially told you you had to bring it back to Planet of the Apes.
Well,
it was you said that. Well, I can't remember what you said. It was like I don't know if it was about the Statue of Liberty or if I can't remember. But
I just remember being in the hospital and it was like a Bosch painting. It was like,
oh yeah, we were in a very stabby hospital. We were in the Brady Hospital and.
We were we were in this small number of people in that hospital who weren't handcuffed to their gurneys.
Yeah, I mean, it was like beaked men walking up and down the aisles, ripping each other's entrails out on stilts.
Yeah.
What are you here for?
Yeah.
I'm here for delicious entrails.
We went to Terry Gilliam University Hospital.
Yeah. But so when all's said and done, we get back on the road, we shoot these dates, and the pandemic hits. So
and we're literally like, things are going to be great. It's February of 2020.
But what I think the thing happened was, if I had normally, because I direct a lot of people's stand-up specials, and I would have just turned it around and had a cleaned up best version of our performances. But because of the pandemic, we could spend so much more time editing it, which ended up meaning that when you tell me a funny story, which I hadn't heard about you being on the second from last Bob Hope special and Bob Hope and you doing a commercial, and I'm like in tears because you're doing Bob Hope going because you go, what was it? He'll go, what was it?
Yeah, it says her take. His line was, "Didn't she used to be my caddy?" And then he just couldn't get it out. Did you?
So
it's like that last Colonel Sanders commercial.
Oh yeah,
it's the same thing. Didn't you Chow Chow made me cuckoo?
So you tell me the story, and I edit it in the movie. It's fine, and then you're able to go, I might be able to get the raw footage.
I have that footage.
So you tell me this insane story, and then it cuts to Bob Hope, because they would say, "Bob, you got to go again." He'd be like, "Why?" And they go, "Peanuts."
Peanuts.
Yeah, Bob. Bob, you're eating too many peanuts. So you tell me
which he hadn't been eating at all.
He just smelled like them.
Well, they wanted to do another take, and he wouldn't give him another take, so they had to say that he had peanuts on his face, and then somebody had to come and pretend to wipe non-existent peanuts off his existent face.
So this documentary ends up being like, you hear stories, you see stuff on stage, but then you actually have a whole catalog of our history, but we also in the documentary explore our relationship together. I don't think I'm ruining the movie for anyone, but if you see it, it starts off with you saying, we didn't like each other when we first met. And I go, no, that's not true. I hated you when we met. And then you said, well, I hated me too. I go, and so we had that in common. Yeah,
that was actually the foundation of our later friendship.
Yeah. And so I know. And by the way, I didn't realize what a horrible person I was to you and how much you were afraid of me. Oh, and so all this is explored, and the same things. It's a lot of stand up, but there's your mental breakdown where you ended up checking in the hospital. The fact that we've got footage of you that week,
first show
after having a breakdown, and what it meant to your mental health and what it meant to your relationship with your family. And then there's also stuff about me, which, I've avoided. It's been a pretty one-sided argument, like with Jerry Seinfeld is very mad at me. By the way, did you see where
it explores our mutual professionally? We're both incredibly
handsome.
But productive and smart. Personally, we're kamikaze pilots.
Yeah, and mine was on TV, so I would set the Tonight Show on fire, smash up Arsenio Hall, and to be able to show these footages and then hear what I was thinking, and then you hear the comedy version of it, but
interspersed with bits. I mean, it's
bits, and I think it's I'm proud of it. I think it came out okay. It's great. It's great. It's hard to be objective, obviously.
But
I think no matter who you are, how brilliant you are, if it's Richard Pryor or Carlin or whoever you are, when you're watching a stand-up special, 45 minutes in, 50 minutes, no matter how brilliant the person is, I was going to say Maria Bamford because to me, she's the best comedian there is. There's a fatigue. You just suddenly you're done. You can't laugh. And I think this thing that we made is such a weird hybrid that it avoids those fatigues. There's the narrative of our relationship. It's the narrative of our self-destructive behaviors. It's our narrative of us in show business.
And and that's the great thing is that we talk about it on stage. You see us talking about things on stage. You see us talking about things to each other off stage. And then we have footage of the actual things.
Yeah.
So it's like a three-layer cake.
I won't give out too much, but on Jerry Seinfeld's car, what is it?
Car show.
On Jerry Seinfeld's television show, Rich Comedians in Cars Bitching About Their Diamond Shoes Being Too Tight. He goes on this huge jag about how
fully objective appraisal.
how I'm unfunny and nobody loves me and he's a winner because he's rich and famous and that I'm a loser and all this stuff, and it's fine, whatever. So he's saying it to your friend. He's making my poor friend
visibly uncomfortable.
My poor friend Bridget Everett, and I love Bridget. He's just making her squirm. He's basically punishing her for being my friend. So all this happened
until he edits in footage of her laughing clearly from something else.
Yeah, it looked like a Dean Martin roast, like cutting to Jamie are laughing at something that he wasn't even there. So I never addressed that in the special. I do address it. So if you want to hear what I have to say,
your side of that story.
Did you see that Seinfeld is going to do a movie for Netflix, and it's the story of the invention of the Pop-Tart, and I that's the whole movie, I think. But it could be good. I don't know. But I'm really surprised that he didn't do a movie about the invention of white bread.
Could be good. Good.
Sure, it could be. But if you just rekindle some of that B movie magic, I'm sure it'll be dynamite.
Yeah. If it was like to me, if you did it like Casino, but it was about the Pop-Tart.
Exactly. Yeah. We would get the dough. Then we take the dough to the, But he's seeing black helicopters flying over while he's trying to make it. But I think
there's a whole montage to Layla where they're trying to get the jam right.
Trying to put it in the toaster. It's too fat. It won't fit in the toaster.
They're true to
Ikizo Kobayashi had a lot of money. He had founded Japan's Hankyu Railway, and in 1932 started the Tokyo Takarazuka Theater Company. The company managed 2 theaters, the Tokyo Takarazuka Theater and the Imperial Garden Theater, which gave that one company pretty much a monopoly on theatrical exhibition in Tokyo. Film exhibition came next. The company developed a film arm called Toho Studios. They made their first movie in 1935. It was called 3 Sisters with Maiden Hearts. And Toho became the home studio of legendary Japanese directors like Akira Kurosawa and Ishiro Honda. In 1953, Toho made Eagles of the Pacific, also known as Operation Kamikaze, which was the story of Isoroku Yamamoto, the admiral of the Imperial Japanese Navy at the start of World War II. Yamamoto was a Japanese hero, even though here in America, he is seen as one of the great villains of the war. Obviously, the attack on Pearl Harbor, for instance, was Yamamoto's brainchild. What is fascinating about this time is that Japan is getting a film industry going to compete with Hollywood. Creatively, though, as a culture, they still have to process World War II, as did Germany and America. I don't think the Russians were allowed to. But so much of Japan's film output in the years after World War II still has World War II coursing through its veins. Whether it was a heroic retelling of Japan at the beginning of the war, like Honda's Eagles of the Pacific, or the reassurance of the richness and depth of Japanese culture by looking backwards at a bygone era, like Kurosawa's samurai films. Eagles of the Pacific was a huge hit in Japan, and Toho began searching for a follow-up, which was intended to be In the Shadow of Glory, a somewhat apologetic film about the aftermath of Japan's occupation of Indonesia during the war, again, trying to come to terms with it. So many feelings! The government of Indonesia was initially supportive of the production, but the people of Indonesia were not quite ready to forgive, and at the very last minute the government denied all visas to the production, which left Toho holding the bag. Take that! But now they had to scramble. They were saved by a disaster. As so happens, the United States had recently tested a hydrogen bomb in the Marshall Islands. A safety zone was cleared so that no one would be exposed to radiation. Only, whoops! The radiation zone was actually twice as large as they had predicted, resulting in massive amounts of human exposure. One such news story involved a Japanese fishing boat named Lucky Dragon No. 5, which was sailing and fishing in an area it thought was safe, because it was sailing and fishing in an area that it was told was safe. Only not. It was actually sailing and fishing through a blizzard of radioactive ash, poisoning the crew and the fish. In the end, 500 tons of fish had to be destroyed, decimating the Japanese fishing industry. Hundreds of inhabitants of the Marshall Islands had to be relocated, and nearly 1,000 fishing boats were found to have been exposed. All because of another United States nuclear whoopsie. The story was reported in the Japanese papers as the second atomic bombing of mankind. Well, the producer of In the Shadow of Glory, a man named Tomoyuki Tanaka. In fact, if you ever see the James Bond film You Only Live Twice, James Bond's opposite number in Japan is named Tiger Tanaka. And I think he's named in honor of Tomoyuki Tanaka, as that film was also shot at Toho Studios. Anyway, Tomoyuki Tanaka, now stuck with a crew and a budget, but no film, could not shake the story of Lucky Dragon No. 5. And he stumbled upon the germs of an idea for a new film, one that would make Toho a fortune, but only initially after almost putting it out of business. And this is not the story of that movie. We have already told you the story of that movie way back in episode 19. But we will include that story here after this one for the sake of context. This is the story of how that dark, somber meditation on the horrors of nuclear weapons that is known as the original 1954 Toho film Gojira, how that film would find an audience, make money, and in the pursuit of more money, give us some of the craziest goddamn movies in existence. In this case, one very specific film, which was one of my favorite movies. Basically, it's the story of how a beautiful poem gave birth to a ridiculous cartoon. The poem is 1954's Gojira, which, fun fact, came out the same year as another Toho classic, Akira Kurosawa's The Seven Samurai. Gojira was known in America as Godzilla, but the American version is a watered-down version of the original Japanese classic, which is dripping, oozing with nuclear anxiety. It is, if nothing else, a visual exploration of cultural PTSD, one that made an ocean of money. And so a sequel was rushed into production, emphasis on rushed. 1955's Godzilla Raids Again was not nearly as good as its predecessor, and although the American distributors of Godzilla couldn't wait to get their hands on it, once they did, they sat on it. It would not be released in the United States until 1959 under the title Gigantus the Fire Monster, or Gigantus, I guess it's pronounced. Gigantus the Fire Monster. Godzilla wasn't even in the title. Gigantus the Fire Monster was released on a double bill with Teenagers from Outer Space. Yes, that's a real movie. And Godzilla would then go into retirement until being resuscitated in 1962 for King Kong vs. Godzilla, which, of course, was the basis for the 2021 summer blockbuster remake Godzilla vs. Kong, and whose crazy origin story was covered in the previous episode story that we will include after this story for your listening pleasure. Okay. Context. So it's 1960, and Toho has made a crazy movie called The Human Vapor. It is the story of a bank robber who can turn himself into a gaseous cloud at will. I know, but it's too easy. Make your own jokes. But in 1961, Toho commissions a script for a sequel to The Human Vapor called Frankenstein vs. the Human Vapor. That's the name of a script. Better than Frankenstein versus a human vapor. Okay, that's as close as I'll go. Now that story, Frankenstein versus the Human Vapor, would later become, wait for it, King Kong versus Godzilla. I know, it doesn't make any sense. But listen to the next story. I'll just say this. It involves someone selling something they don't own and then being rewarded for it. So King Kong vs. Godzilla gets made in 1962 and becomes, pardon the pun, a monster hit. Now, we are light years away from Gojira. King Kong vs. Godzilla is a cartoon. The two monsters wrestle and grapple and do karate moves and shove trees down each other's throats. The King Kong suit is bizarrely, inexplicably horrible. I mean, they make Godzilla look great. How hard is it to look like a gorilla? They're real, for Christ's sakes. Just copy it. But the movie is awesome and beautiful in its own ridiculous way, but serious it is not. As I said, this whole thing started with Toho wanting to make a Frankenstein movie, and they still did. Enthusiasm for the Human Vapor had dissipated. Okay, that's two. But Frankenstein's monster was still very much on their minds. King Kong vs. Godzilla was a hit, and Toho was excited to continue that trend with another American monster. Why not Frankenstein vs. Godzilla? Of course, for this to work, Frankenstein would have to be giant, otherwise the fight would be over super quick. They came up with an idea, but Toho wasn't crazy about it, and somebody said, instead of Frankenstein's monster, what about Mothra? Mothra? Yeah, we've already made a movie called Mothra anyway, so we already have the suit. You know, Mothra. It's a big moth. Moths are terrifying. If you're a sweater. But they made that movie, and it became known in America as Godzilla vs. the Thing, and it's actually pretty good. Well, okay, but still nothing for poor Frankenstein. And that's what I'm calling him for the time being. I know, he's Frankenstein's monster. I know. Finally, it's late 1964, early 1965. And Toho announces a film called Frankenstein vs. Baragon. Huh? I know. It would also be announced under the title Frankenstein vs. the Giant Devilfish. Right. In America, the film would be released as Frankenstein Conquers the World. Frankenstein Conquers the World is beautifully insane. It has an all-Japanese cast, except for its American lead, Nick Adams. Nick Adams was an American teenage heartthrob. He played Chick in Rebel Without a Cause, and became very tight with that era's Brat Pack. James Dean, Natalie Wood, Dennis Hopper, Sal Mineo. He was in the movies Mr. Roberts, Picnic, No Time for Sergeants. He was super tight with James Dean, and after James Dean died, Adams looped some of his lines for Giant. With James Dean gone to the great actors studio in the sky, Adams befriended Elvis Presley. Elvis was a fan of James Dean and sought out all of his old buddies. Fun fact, Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, didn't want Elvis hanging out with James Dean's old pals, for fear they would tell Elvis the percentage they were paying to their managers, because standard rate for a manager is 15%, and Colonel Tom took a more than healthy 50%. And don't get me started on Scatter the Chimp. Anyway, Nick Adams was not afraid to capitalize on his friendship with the King, or James Dean for that matter, and he did quite well for himself. He was Johnny Yuma in the TV Western The Rebel, playing an ex-Confederate soldier who wandered the Old West with a sawed-off shotgun and his trusty journal. Yep, an affectation that led one TV critic to describe him as a Reconstruction-era beatnik. The Rebel ran 2 years, and as the mid-60s approached, Nick Adams found himself in a career slump. That was good timing for Toho Studios. The company needed an American star for the massive American audience. And when Nick Adams' phone rang about a movie called Frankenstein vs. Baragon, he took the check first and he asked questions later. Fun fact, Nick Adams delivered all of his lines in English, and the Japanese actors, who knew they would be dubbed later, spoke all of their lines in Japanese. I do not know how they accomplished this. Okay, the story of Frankenstein Conquers the World in brief. Like all Japanese monster movies, the film starts in Nazi Germany. What? A German scientist with no dialogue is visited by some German soldiers who also have no dialogue. The soldiers help themselves to a container containing a still beating human heart. The heart, we will learn, cannot stop beating, even if it wanted to, which it doesn't, because it's a heart, and that's all hearts do, so why stop? The heart is then given by the Germans to the Japanese, who study it in a lab in Hiroshima. Wait, Why do I know that name? Right! Exactly! Not that Hiroshima! Yep, the Americans bomb the lab and the heart is doused with radiation. Cut to 15 years later, when we see a weird feral kid running loose in the city. The next thing you know, a bunch of normal, non-feral kids run into their classroom to find the carcass of a rabbit that has been ripped apart, lying all over the floor in bloody segments. Oh well, I'm sure it won't affect them. Then they find the feral boy hiding in a cave by the beach. They capture him and take him to the hospital where Nick Adams and his sexy female Japanese associate work. Somehow they discover that this kid is immune to radiation, which leads to one of my favorite pieces of dialogue in the whole film.
I understand they found a child who resists radiation.
Yes, this boy here can resist it. I was just reading all about it, as a matter of fact.
You said in Hiroshima, sometime during the last war, you saw a heart that wouldn't stop beating.
I almost forgot about that incident.
Did you now? Well, we learn that the mysterious ever-beating heart belonged to the Frankenstein monster, and it was given to the Japanese by the Germans to study. I know, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, it seems like this little feral boy, who looks like a skinny kid with a missing tooth wearing a clumsy fake Frankenstein forehead, and then you realize that it's supposed to really be his forehead, but for some reason the makeup is so bad it looks like a skinny kid with a missing tooth wearing a clumsy fake Frankenstein forehead. Anyway, it's surmised that the boy, who was seen around Hiroshima, literally grew out of Frankenstein's heart. You heard that right. And I don't mean in the emotional sense either. In this case, the boy is the son of Frankenstein. Or actually, he is the son of the Frankenstein's monster. Actually, he's the son of the Frankenstein monster's heart. There. But how can they be sure? How can they be sure that this kid is the son of Frankenstein's monster's irradiated heart? The German doctor has a great idea.
Cut off the monster's arms or legs. If it is Frankenstein, new arms or legs will grow. And the severed limbs also will remain alive.
Yeah. And if they don't grow back, you just say what the American government said when it irradiated your entire fishing fleet. Po buddy's nerfect. But since this is a Japanese monster movie, the son of Frankenstein's monster's heart has to be giant. And so it is discovered that protein makes the monster grow and grow and grow. There is a lot of crazy food talk in Frankenstein Conquers the World.
Delicious.
Thank you, thank you.
I can never get them like that. I think I cooked them too long.
Oh, it's very simple. The most important thing is to select a good portion of meat.
That's the second thing. The first thing is, you find a cow, then you lasso it, and then you have good meat.
So, Frankenstein's monster's heart's son keeps eating and eating and eating and growing and growing and growing until he's like 30, 40 feet tall. At which point he looks like a 30, 40 foot tall skinny kid with a missing tooth wearing a fake Frankenstein forehead. He escapes and runs off into the woods where he starts killing livestock. He beats up a horse. He messes with a boat. He throws a tree at a house and eventually starts fighting Baragon. Who? Right. Remember? Baragon. Another monster who comes out of the ground during an earthquake to fight Frankenstein's monster's heart's son, who looks like a turtle without a shell and with a vaguely Cocker Spaniel-esque face. That is right around the time you realize that Frankenstein's monster's heart's son actually looks a lot like Jerry Lewis in a Frankenstein sketch. The film ends with Frankenstein's monster's heart's son dispatching Baragon and then being sucked down into quicksand. But the American producer, a guy named Henry Saperstein, was really impressed with the scene in King Kong vs. Godzilla where King Kong fought an octopus. So he said, "Do that!" So Toho reconvened, got the actor back in the suit, got a big fake octopus, and shot the fight for the American ending. And when Saperstein saw it, he said, never mind. The film was released and it did well. So well, in fact, that a sequel went into production based on the premise that parts of Frankenstein's monster's heart son that were torn off in the fight with Baragon grew into creatures of their own. The film was shot under the title The Frankenstein Brothers. Then The Two Frankensteins. Then Frankenstein versus Frankenstein. Then Frankenstein's Decisive Battle. And then Frankenstein's Fight. It would eventually take on a new title that had no reference to Frankenstein whatsoever, and would famously be referenced as a favorite film of people like Quentin Tarantino, Tim Burton, Guillermo del Toro, Brad Pitt, last and in this list least, myself. I am talking, of course, about War of the Gargantuas. But that little movie deserves its own story.
The words get stuck in my throat. The words get stuck in my throat.
What's to eat? What's to drink?
Good food galore.
Quick as a wink.
Ice cream bars. It's the handy way to enjoy smooth, rich, creamy ice cream. Get some.
I bet you know who that is. It's everyone's favorite 150-foot tall radioactive reptile, Godzilla. Or Gojira, as he is known in his native Japan. Gojira being a combination of the Japanese words for gorilla and whale, which in America describes anyone on the show Duck Dynasty. Yeah, I said it. Now, in America, when you say Godzilla, it conjures images of a guy in a droopy rubber suit fighting another guy in a droopy rubber suit over a miniature model of Tokyo. But the original, Japanese version of Godzilla is what we're talking about. Americans consider the original Godzilla to be 1954's Godzilla, King of the Monsters, starring of all people Raymond Burr as Steve Martin, a wild and crazy American reporter visiting Tokyo just in time to watch it destroyed. Although that movie contains footage from the original, it cannot compare. The original is called Gojira, and it has an all-Japanese cast in a gritty, black and white, downbeat, post-nuclear tragedy. The film has a lot more in common with On the Beach or Failsafe than it does with later movies like Godzilla vs. Megalon. In 1953, a Japanese film producer named Tomoyaki Tanaka was inspired by the Lucky Dragon No. 5 incident, in which a small Japanese tuna boat strayed too close to an American nuclear test in the Marshall Islands, giving its entire crew radiation poisoning. From there, he spun a tale of a long-extinct creature resuscitated from its watery grave by nuclear testing. The theme of the film is nuclear anxiety, with the after effects of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki blasts soaking up every frame. People in the film are always comparing Godzilla's raids to the nuclear attack, and in one exceptionally creepy scene, a young woman huddles against the wall of her building with her young child. As Godzilla is heard approaching, she holds her close and says, "It's okay, dear. We'll see Daddy in heaven soon." Godzilla went on to become, of course, not only a hit, but a Japanese cultural icon, right up there with Americans' Batman or Mickey Mouse. In sequel after sequel, Godzilla went from being a dark vision of a nuclear nightmare to something of a superhero himself. In 1971's Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, he fought pollution. But his cultural influence is undeniable, especially in Japan. In 1996, Sony forked over a ton of dough to make the first American-made Godzilla movie, directed by the Independence Day team of Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich. The film starred Matthew Broderick and was queued up to be the big blockbuster of that summer. That honor, of course, went to Saving Private Ryan. Not too surprisingly, the Sony remake of Godzilla was as bad as the original Gojira was great. And while the average moviegoers were disappointed, Godzilla fans were outraged. In the June 1998 issue of G-Fan, the official Godzilla fan magazine, editor and publisher J.D. Lees voiced fans' anger. Beneath the banner headline, Fraudzilla, Mr. Lee writes, I want to mention one area where I feel the filmmakers went badly off track. The Godzilla designers and creators took great pains to present Godzilla as a real animal, and in this, they succeeded admirably. But in doing so, they betrayed a huge misunderstanding about monsters in general, and Godzilla in particular. Steven Spielberg made the point in Jurassic Park that the dinos were not monsters, but really just animals, and he was correct to do this, but Godzilla is not just an animal. He really is a monster. So he should not behave like an animal. He should behave like a monster. He should not run from the army, but attack it. He should not dodge around buildings, but plow through them. Real animals can't spew a radioactive ray from their mouths, but fantasy monsters can. By trying to ground their creature so firmly in realism, the folks at Sony destroyed the very essence of what makes Godzilla special. No one would ever consider Sony's Godzilla king of the monsters. Now, if Mr. Devlin wants to start building a positive relationship with Godzilla fans, I welcome that. My goal, as always, is to positively promote Godzilla and the kaiju genre, keeping the spark of imagination glowing bright in all of our hearts. Together we've passed another milestone. Let's take heart in the public's new and increased Godzilla awareness and look forward to better things ahead. The movie's called Joyride, and we can tell. I guess we can say this.
Yeah,
it's gonna premiere
it'll be
at the Moon Tower Comedy Festival in September.
Yeah, so folks can see it at the Moon Tower Comedy Festival. That'll
in
be
Austin,
the premiere,
Texas.
Which is, I love that festival. It's so much fun, and I'm so thrilled. It's perfect. I'm so happy that this is the target audience for that movie. And that'll be the premiere, and then it'll be available for folks to watch in October.
And it's great because it is a different. It's a different kind of comedy special. There's never been one like it, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I'm sure. Look, it was going to happen, and I think it will happen. And I'm sure other comics have explored this a little bit. The thing is usually when they show behind the scene footage, the comedians are on, and you and I had these cameras rolling all the time, so we're not on. We're and on purpose. I actually had the cameras fall back when they're recording us. And it's truly like what it's like, for better or worse, what it's hanging out with us. Yeah, and I think that
we've both been doing it long enough, and we've done other things as well, that we both know that we don't have to be on, that it's
but
we can be real and that's actually engaging. Like the last thing I want to see is a bunch of guys in a tour van playing pranks on each other. Like, that is not time I get back at the end of my life.
But the thing is like, to me, one of my favorite things, and it's very small, but I was explaining how, I had a brother that he would have the cops over all the time. He
Not socially.
No. He was.
Hey, some cops are coming over. We're going to watch Bonanza.
Hey, come on in. I don't know. Did you know my brother was in police academy? So no, he was a drug enthusiast. How about if I say that? But he was living with my parents.
Amateur pharmaceutical enthusiast.
Yeah, and he lived on my parents' couch for some of this. But my mother, when people would talk about me, my mother would always go, when they say, you must be proud of your son. I say, which one? I'm proud of all my sons. And I'm like, you're really proud of the son that had the cops over last night? His dog bit a cop even. And so you say, oh, that's funny. That reminds me of this bit. And then we cut and you're doing the bit.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing. It's like you see us on the road. Sometimes we start talking about stuff and then it ends up on stage. And
yeah,
I don't know.
Very organic.
It might be pretentious, but the thing I think about it is I do think in the future, most comedians or a lot of comedians will do similar things. I don't think we invented it. It's like, what was the reality show on MTV? Shoot, I can't believe the first one. The MTV, Real World. Yeah. So Real World. Would there have been a Real World without the Loud family?
Right.
The reality is, yes, there would. I mean, the reason Real World could exist is that they could turn around and burn so much video footage. That's why it existed. The Loud family, it was all shot in film, so it was more expensive and slower process. But I kind of hope it would be interesting to see comics a little bit more, what makes them tick. I think this answers a lot of questions if you were a fan of either of us and wonder how did we become who we are and why we do what we do.
There's there's elements of and again there's elements of this. I think it's called the road trip, the Steve Coogan movie.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That. And also, have you ever seen Loud, Quiet, Loud? It's a Pixies tour documentary.
Oh, no.
Their first reunion tour. And there's stuff like that in there too, where they're just rolling film and they get people when they stop, when they're like the camera's on, but they're not aware of the camera being on. And you just kind of get to eavesdrop into their life. I think that's just innately fascinating. It's the reason.
And I think also on this thing, and maybe we'll stop talking about us and plugging this thing, but I think on Joyride, what was fun when I was putting it together is like, as soon as it got too heavy, as soon as it got too maudlin, I mean, I discussed a lot of my dead friends and things, and
we should say I'm the only friend you have that's still alive.
No, I got a lot of friends that are still breathing, but for some reason, I don't know why I'm the Ebola monkey of suicide. Widow. So,
Black Widow cat.
but as soon as the documentary gets too heavy, we put in some strong stand-up. And the fact that our show was 2.5 hours long, we were able to whittle it down to 70 minutes.
Yeah, so, 70 minutes. It's a great watch. So it's called Joyride. And it's coming out. Be out in the fall.
It'll be out in October. It premieres at the Moon Tower Comedy Festival, which is one of my favorite festivals.
Yeah, they're great. Colleen is awesome. Now, and for, people don't know, like you've directed a lot of movies. People don't. It was funny when we were in. I think it was in Asheville. We went in the video store and you had your own section in the director's section. Which
with my last name misspelled. So it's like, hey, you get your own directing section, but also we still don't know how to spell Goldthwait. But
did they have an E on
it? No, I think the TH was at the end. Whatever. It didn't. It kind of was beautiful, actually.
Yeah,
it was really
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's let's see, there's Shakes the Clown, Windy City Heat, Stay, aka Sleeping Dogs Lie, World's Greatest Dad, God Bless America, Willow Creek, and Call Me Lucky.
Right.
So those are all I have directed a lot of movies.
And what's interesting about, and now you would add Joyride to that. What's interesting about your sort of film, it's you talk about like Robin has the most lucrative dysfunction had,
right?
Because you don't stick to a genre.
No, not at all.
You have like documentaries, and you have a horror movie, and you have a found footage movie, and you have a black comedy, and
a rom-com with a tiny bit of bestiality,
with just a scandalous hint of, or would it be wrong to say with just enough bestiality?
What if Evan Hansen wasn't a musical and was shot 10 years earlier?
That is awkward.
Yeah, a little awkward. I went to see Evan Hansen because people were going, "It's really a lot like World's Greatest Dad." I was like, "It's not like World's Greatest Dad." And then there was a time where there was like a scene that was really a lot like World's Greatest Dad. And I didn't do this on purpose, just it got quiet in the theater. And I went, "Oh my God." Like I yelled out. And then intermission comes, and I still want to make sure I'm not like being like, comics, like everybody, I created everything,
Sure.
So I asked Nora, my girlfriend, I go, because I didn't want to say what I thought. I go, right. "So what do you think?" She goes, "Somebody's got a lot of explaining to do." But World's Greatest Dad is my take on Cherno de Bergerac, or Roxanne, which is right. Roxanne is a knockoff of Cherno de Bergerac. There was like one of the characters was so obviously, I knew people were going to mention the movie Heathers when they saw it, so I just ran into it and I named the character Heather. Right. I don't think it was a ripoff. I'm not interested in that. I'm not even bitter. Only when I'm ego surfing on the early reviews for Evan Hansen and people are going, "This is such a totally original idea." That was the only time I'd go, "Arr." Yeah.
Me and Rob Cohen did this show on MTV called Super Adventure Team, which was a parody of the Thunderbirds. And then 2 years later, Team America came out.
Right.
You can't patent parodying something. They were both parodies,
right.
Both parodies of Thunderbirds. And then they did use all of our voice cast. And then we finally, but I was like, just let it. Life is short. You don't want to be the guy that sues. You don't want to be the guy that,
yeah.
But then also, we did talk to the guy that was running MTV at the time and go like, did they ever ask him? "Oh yeah, no, that we sent them the whole thing. They wanted to see it." I was like, "Oh, great, thanks, guys."
But it's I don't know. I'm not upset. It's sweet that a couple people have my back, maybe, but I'm not bitter about it. It's can't. Like, well, it's what's the point? And also,
one day, life is short.
At the end of the day, the end of Evan Hansen is about how we all need each other, and some BS like that. And the end of World's Greatest Dad is, Robin's character says, "I used to think the worst thing in life is ending up all alone. It isn't. The worst thing in life is ending up with people that make you feel all alone." So that movie was middle-aged me making big decisions in my life and changing how things were. And what really upsets me, or it upset me, is people take a picture of Robin. They put that quote, they attribute it to Robin, and they make it about them. They go, "Look how sad. I'm sad. Robin's sad. Look at this. Isn't this a tragedy?" And the reality is, Robin's character in a movie that I wrote, that honestly, I think half of that sentence really came from my ex-wife, if all honesty. I think she helped me with that line. But so it used to bother me when I saw this meme, because it shows up a lot and people will tag me on it, of Robin looking sad and the quote that his character said in World's War. And I used to get upset. And then I went, holy shit, this is the exact plot of World's Greatest Dad. Robin dies, people rewrite the history and make it about themselves. And meanwhile, they have no concern.
Oh my God.
They have no concern for the people that actually knew him. Robin didn't die alone. He had his wife loved him, his kids, his family. He had Rebecca and Dan. He had all these people around him that loved him. And he was just misdiagnosed as having Parkinson's when he had Lewy body dementia. And I lived with it. I struggled with it. I was in constant communication and
he did not commit suicide because he was sad. He committed suicide because he was literally insane.
Yeah, his brain was attacking him. And eventually, I mean, this is probably too personal, but eventually one of the last times I saw him, I could see that he was choosing not to speak. And I think he was choosing not to speak because I know that he knew what he was thinking was what you said. What he was thinking was so insane he didn't want to say it out loud.
Yeah. It was not. But it was not that he was. It was not that he was depressed and sad. But it's one of those things where the story is so, and you see this a lot. The simple story is too good. The example that I always
the sad clown is
well, it's I'll take a really weird analogy to it. Smile, the Beach Boys album.
Oh, okay.
Beach Boys.
I thought you meant the Michael Ritchie movie about the beauty pageant. That's all right.
Yeah, you know my love of that movie, but after Pet Sounds, Brian Wilson went to make Smile. He was working with Van Dyke Parks. He came up with this amazing thing. The Beach Boys came back from the tour. Mike Love didn't like it. They said it breaks the formula. It's no good. And then they destroyed Brian Wilson. And that's, and that was, if you like the documentary, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, that's a very easy narrative that Brian Wilson was the artistic genius. Mike Love was the evil businessman. Brian had this beautiful thing, and then Mike Love destroyed it because it wasn't the formula, and Brian never really recovered. Well, you know what? They made Smile eventually, and it's not as good as Pet Sounds. The fact of the matter is, it wasn't that good.
So what you're saying is notes sometimes notes
but just like
are good.
The real story is a lot. The real story is often much more complicated.
Well, but the real story, the problem people have with the real story with narrative about Robin is that it's not about you. And so people want to make that story about Robin. Oh, I'm sad and he was sad. So Robin and I are symbiotic, and it's like that's not the case. He was misdiagnosed. He had numerous doctors, and he was sober. They want to think that it was about drugs too. And
well, it was also the medication that he was prescribed for Parkinson's exacerbated what was really wrong with him.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm like, well, I had okay. So this horrible tragedy happens, and it was strange. I mean, I talk about it now, but it was strange because everybody has their 2 cents about this person that passed away, and then my own mourning is confused. In some ways, I'm even robbed of it. So I had to keep it very,
right. Yeah, that makes sense. I get.
You have to keep it very small. Like people will talk about Robin, and I'm kind of not allowed to chime in because they don't want to know. They don't want to know that he was a man. He was a wonderful, sweet, hilarious, nice man.
Yeah.
And they want some other thing, that he was a mad genius and that he was tortured. And,
he was a tragic genius.
But when I see that meme, now I'm fine. I laugh because it's the plot of World's Greatest Dad. But someone just quickly pounds on a meme and they want to get heat and buzz and all this. And I'm like going, there's human beings involved. I know and I've done this where I take a swipe at someone who's so famous thinking that they don't have, but it's like, there's Robin's family and people who love him. And you're saying that they weren't there for him towards the end. And that's why he died. And those people, I hope they get ass cancer. There, I said my point.
Curable, but still.
Just so it's long, protracted.
Yeah. But again, it what it does is, like you said, it makes it about them, and it simplifies a complex story, and and I always find that about like the 27 Club, which is like all of these great musicians that died at 27. It's not good that they died at 27.
But
it's the guy who, Kurt Cobain, who I know is a friend of yours and was not in his right mind when he took his life. He wrote like it's better to burn out than to it's better to burn out than to fade. Well, the guy who wrote that's still alive and he's doing great. So you had a really big pandemic.
Yeah.
You moved. You made a movie and you moved right out of the gate. That's a big pandemic. That's a big pandemic for you.
Yeah. Well, moving to the Midwest in January during a pandemic. But people are like, it snows where you live. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this moisture that falls from the sky. How's Lake Mead going?
Yeah, exactly.
So I love the weather. I'm looking forward to it. But I did have my
we're both from the East Coast. So
but I had my first tornado, which, like earthquakes is just, and
then it's over. Yeah.
Well, you wake up, but the phone goes off and says, hey man, we're having a tornado. Go to your basement. I got some snacks. I gathered up the cats and we just hung out in the basement. And then the phone tells me it's done. But it was like, although Robert Smith and my cat, Robert Smith,
the Robert Smith.
No, but they're just alike. Like he's not a joiner. The other cats, I opened the door, they ran to the basement. Robert Smith's like, no, I'm just gonna sulk. I hope the tornado hits me first and the house. Robert Smith, my cat, it looks like he's got eyeliner on. His hair is huge, and he just hates me. He's always. If you want to find me, look 20 feet away from Robert Smith because that's where I am. He's just got to stay away from me.
Our cat George has a problem with his urine. He's crystals in his urine, and it's painful when he pees. And he's
not like the magical crystals.
No. But he's got this medication now that it basically takes this little pill and it loosens his pee hole.
Sure.
So some animal pharmaceutical guy woke up in the middle of the night. I've got it. And now they sold this medication and they're living large on that loose cat pee hole money.
Well, yeah.
We talked how did your family get rich? Well, you know how when your cat's pee hole is really tight.
Well,
we fixed that.
Where'd you get that Ferrari? That's the license plate, pee hole 1.
Yeah, you're just out there spending all that floppy cat pee hole money.
I was on, it's funny, like getting back to comedy and questioning, am I funny? Especially after having head trauma. And I was on our friend Tony V and Jimmy Dunn. They have a podcast.
I didn't know that.
And they read weird stories in the news. And one of the stories was a guy. This happens a lot, but an albino python climbed up through a toilet and bit a guy in the sack. Bit him in the sack, and he had to go to the hospital. And I go, I'm sure he went to the hospital, and he said, "Hey, I got a python in my pants." And the nurse goes, "I got a bomb ass pussy, but you still got to wait in line with everyone else." The moment that I put that joke together, spontaneous, I was like, "Okay, I think I'm over the concussion."
Speaking of animals, so you're back on the road. How did you feel about getting back on stage? How was that after 15 months off?
I would say I was very, very nervous. And
I was terrified.
Very nervous. And then like by the second or third, I was at the Comedy Attic, and it was like, give me the light when I've done 35 and I'll do 40. And then by the end of the weekend, I was doing like an hour and 10. And it felt so good, just to be up on stage and people are smiling. And I was like, my bitterness towards our job was evaporated.
You're also going. You're going to be at the Zanies in Rosemont. You're going to Kansas City, Spokane, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and Indianapolis. So you're
come on out, see me. Zanies, Rosemont, and
June 23rd and 24th. I mean, July 23rd, 24th.
But I'm out on the road. You know, it's funny on social media when you plug yourself, people go, "Why don't you come here?" It's like, well, thank you for wanting me to come here.
Yeah.
But also, I didn't choose to ignore your town. I didn't go, I will only play these cities.
I'm not ignoring you.
I'm sorry, Peoria, but you can bite my sack. You know, I go. I'm a journeyman. I go where they want me.
Please, if you've a moment, bite my sack. Bobcat Goldthwait.
Dana Gould.
Good night, everybody.
Other podcasts reach for the sky. Dana Gould bound.
We barely
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano.
Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
I'm a DJ, I'm a DJ, I'm a person, I'm a person, I'm a singer, I'm a singer, I love to sing and DJ. Boom! Peace out! Peace out! You want me? Peace out!